Let's call our meeting to order. And we'll start with, I should have asked Jeff, do you ready to pop the flag up?
You know what? I'm not. I'm so sorry.
Okay,
I'm out
we
of
got the council
practice.
chambers in there, so we're going to stand up and we'll
Yeah.
do the pledge to the council chamber flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
United
The United States of America,
and
and
to the
the
republic
republic for which it stands,
nation,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We were
All
a
right,
little out of
thank you.
practice with that one, but
Yeah.
we'll be more prepared next time.
All right, Mayor, are you safe? Do you want to take over?
No, you go ahead. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. So let's go ahead and start with the roll call.
Yeah, I give me about 15 minutes till I get to the lodge and have Wi-Fi. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, Council President, so we'll do a quick roll call. Councilor Mayton,
Present.
Councilor Smallwood,
Here.
Councilor Sheldon,
Here.
Councilor Ramsayer,
Here.
Councilor Hanley,
Here.
Councilor Hokinson,
Here.
and Mayor Walker.
Here.
All right, so our agenda today, we're going to go through, we're going to do the consent agenda for our meeting minutes from July 21st. We're going to have the old business. We're going to bring back the policy adoption for the special service contract program guidelines. And under new business, we'll have the plan adoption, CityNet master plan, and then we'll go into the reports. Any changes to the agenda? You sure, Lori? You could bring something up. All right. Then let's go to public comment. Jeff, do we have anybody?
We did not have any signups online, Council President. Tyler, did we have anyone show up in person?
No one in person this evening.
All right, moving right along then. Let's move forward to the consent agenda. I believe we were all there that night, so entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I make a motion, we could approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
All right, motion from Councilor Sheldon and seconded by Councilor Mayton to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda approved. Moving forward to the old business. Tyler.
Thank you, Council President Hokinson. I'm just going to turn this one right over to Jeff and dive right into the Special Service Contract Program updated guidelines.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tyler. So Council, we brought this item to you at the last meeting. This is pretty straightforward, I hope. I'll just quickly run through the feedback that we received at the last meeting, which we then carried forward into some further edits. So one item that the council asked us to tackle is to establish some scoring criteria for the review subcommittee. You'll see that that's been done. Some other items that were asked for were to strike the word involve from the criteria, the eligibility criteria regarding politics and religion. And the council also asked for more flexibility regarding funding logistics because some organizations may not have sufficient funds to pay up front. And so we've inserted some language around that. And then finally, there was general encouragement from the council to provide encouragement for, I'm going to use words like, prudent investments of public funds. So the idea of allocating seed money that would then be leveraged by organizations to create even better outcomes in the future. So walking you through the changes that have been made, if you look at the green text on your staff report, you'll see, I'm going to actually do the last part first, which is those scoring criteria, the 5 bullets that you see at the bottom of the green text. Here's what we've come up with. So out of 100 points, just evenly divided into 5 different subcategories here. Number one, obviously, advancement of the program objectives to the extent that this grant would further the objectives of the program. That's whatever the council decides those objectives should be for that biennium. And you see that that's at the top of the guidelines. That would get you more points. Number 2 is positive impact on Sandy residents in particular, acknowledging that a project may easily benefit more than just Sandy residents, but that has been a focus of the council. So that's another criteria. Numbers 3 and 4 are kind of related, but they're different. So relative value of the investment, this is the idea of greater bang for the buck for this particular project. So relatively modest investment of public funds, getting a large return, that gets more points. The fourth one is related. It is the idea of kind of long-term sustainability. So the idea of investing some seed money that's going to be used for years to come, that's looked upon favorably under this scoring regimen here. Or the idea of purchasing a long-term asset that can be used by the applicant for years to come. That would get you more points on number 4. And then finally, having a positive track record of grant administration, either under this program or other grant programs. If they can document that, then that gets them points. So those are the scoring criteria that we've laid out here. Other things just quickly, we've added some very flexible language based on depending on circumstances around the city manager being able to negotiate a different payment arrangement rather than only reimbursement. So they would have to tell us during the application stage, that they are wanting something other than a reimbursement based grant. And so the council would know that going in, but then the city manager authority would be delegated to the city manager to figure out the exact arrangement of that. The grant reporting would be related to that agreement that is negotiated between the applicant and the city manager. They would need to give us grant reporting at the time that we're giving them money, presumably. I also want to note that in going back through this, I found that limiting eligible organizations to only 501c3s would probably exclude some that with just unintended. So like a Chamber of Commerce, for example, is actually 501c6. There are other examples like a VFW or something like that is another section of the Internal Revenue Code. So we just changed the language to be more general, just including all tax exempt organizations under the Internal Revenue Code. And then we did strike that word involved as directed by the council. So that's kind of a rundown of the changes that were made. You can see that in the final version in front of you. Happy to answer any questions from the council, but hopefully we've captured all the direction that you gave us last time. So I'll pass it back to you, Council President.
All right, so questions and discussion. Councilor Henley.
Sorry, unmute. My question is the successful track record of the applicant. If there is no track record, if they're a first-time applicant for a grant, is it negative score? How would you score something like that?
Glad you asked that. I had the same question. Thanks.
That's an excellent question, Councilor. And I'll be honest with you, that hadn't occurred to me. Is there a preference of the council on this? We can certainly just accommodate it.
Would you be opposed to adding language in there or other grant programs or similar type experience?
Is that a
I
question
saw
for
some
me,
heads
Councilor,
nod.
or is that, yeah, go ahead.
I'll pose it to everybody, but I was asking you specifically if that would fit something like that. But it looks like we have some consensus to at least think about that as we get ready to adopt a motion.
So
Other
we can
comments,
certainly, we can come up with some
Go ahead.
language. Looks like we have a hand up.
Mayor.
Yeah, I think a lot of times that people tend, one approach is to just give everybody those points unless there's not a positive successful track record. So if there isn't a successful track record, they kind of lose a few points. But if there is, or if it's, and I do like the idea that y'all made about, tweaking the language a little bit to include other grants and all that. So, but in general, I think the intent is to kind of just dock them a few points if there isn't a successful track record.
Yeah, I think I was just looking for somebody who hasn't run a grant, but they have some demonstrable experience that would qualify them and give them a high likelihood of being successful. I would want them to be able to score high on that. That's where I was coming from.
And I
Something
think,
like,
like I said, even the ones that haven't applied, they, generally, I kind of take everything as, optimistically that it's going to go well until proven otherwise. So I would tend to kind of give them all, good points unless they don't have a good track record.
Okay. Any other comments? Questions?
I did, I'm sorry.
Councilor Mayton.
Yeah, I'm trying to find my note page here. Mine was around the reporting. It was, under the stipulation that written grant reports are due twice in the biennium at the same time reimbursement requests. What I was concerned about was that we weren't going to have a exact time frame on when those reports were going to be coming to us. So I didn't know if there was some language that we could put in about the intervals or the exact timing of those reports. And then more importantly, could we always require a final report regardless of the payment schedule on the project?
so I think the answer to both things is yes. First of all, the way this was written originally was you can apply for reimbursement twice. Once halfway through the biennium, so it would be June of, halfway through the biennium, and then again at the end, and that reporting would be required at both points. If somebody requests and is approved for an alternative payment schedule, that obviously isn't going to work, right? So we said that the city manager in whatever arrangement he works out with this organization in terms of payment would also arrange the schedule for reporting on a similar basis. So we tried to leave it flexible because I don't know, the circumstances could be different for different organizations, right? But your last question, I believe, was can you always require a final report at the end of the biennium? That was certainly my intention. I can make that more explicit in the final version, if that would address that concern, Counselor.
Yeah, I was just thinking about putting like mid-biennium in there, the words, so that it would be descriptive as when it was coming. I mean, you could either say mid-biennium or you could say twice during the biennium, or you could say at the same time as reimbursement request. Just something that gave some specificity to when that report would be coming, as well as that final report.
Happy to reflect that in the final version. That was certainly the intention.
I will just
So
add-
Jeff, are we looking? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, if I just may, I would add that part of our hesitancy on listing specific dates is that if the program, let's say their grant applications for a program that's in October, we don't want them to wait 6 or 8 months to provide a report to the council. We'd like to get that report sort of updated and that information to you so you know the benefit of the program, the success of the program, and also avoid some of those scheduling nightmares trying to get 3 or 4 organizations all on the docket on the same evening. We ran into scheduling conflicts before trying to get everything in one council meeting. So we're trying to give at least a little bit of flexibility dependent on the applicant or the program itself.
Yeah, I guess Councilor Maiden, if you're looking at if you see section 7 where under option 1, that was the original conception of how this would work, where it says halfway through the biennium in June of 2027 or June of 26, and then again at the end. So that was how it was written originally, and then the council said, well, we want some more flexibility for some of these other organizations, and so that's why you see option 2.
Yeah, and again, I want to reiterate, I wasn't talking about something specific for everyone. More as there's a specified timeline of when we're going to see that report. So with is it at the time of reimbursement? Is it within 3 months of the project start? Is it when? So there's a consistency theme to it, not only for the city council but also for the applicants who are signing up for this, so they know when they're going to be graded or at least have to present an update. And I didn't even get to my second point, so I apologize. It was around the point system, and this is just more of a question for city council. I understand the considerations of the SSCP review subcommittee and what we were looking for there, but are there other things that interest me would be things about equity and inclusion impact. And if is there a way to bonus for that? And also the level of community engagement. Because points for meaningful involvement in their community members is the whole purpose of that piece, right? And if it has some impact, I don't know if that has any bearing on giving somebody a surplus of points for those two things. And then obviously equity and inclusion, just because DEI is near and dear to my heart. So
Yeah, it was near and dear to Portland until recently too, apparently. And then the federal funds kind of changed their tune on that one. Well, so, Councilor Maiden, I know we have some. I'm trying to think if it's under our rules or our high level policies, but we have how we treat we have a statement in there about how we deal with people in general in the community and our approach to various things. I wonder if that's a better place to focus on the equity and inclusivity and make sure that we've got those broad, because that's a broad policy that should overarch everything we do, not just this project or this grant program.
yeah, and I don't have any weight in it either way. I just was something that came up, when I was thinking about, giving points for consideration, bonus
Yeah.
points for projects that benefit underserved or marginalized, areas would play more near and dear to my strings. That I would be more in favor of supporting financially, versus just a business proper as well.
So I will point out the clarification where the scoring criteria is specific to the SSCP was based off a comment that I brought up in our last meeting, where I was questioning whether or not the criteria applied to council or just the review committee. And the clarification is that it would only be applied to the review committee, allowing us to have whatever discussion of whatever council was seated at the time and those values that they hold near and dear to weigh.
That makes
weigh in at
sense.
that point.
Absolutely. I hear you.
Any other questions? All right, then Jeff, the question I did have for you is, are you looking for this to be finalized, or are you going to bring back or want to bring back something additional?
So I'm happy to do whatever the council would like. I'm hoping if the edits are relatively minimal and everyone understands and is on board with them, it would be great to get it adopted, because we'd like to we're already a little bit behind the 8 ball in the timing of this. That would be my
So
recommendation to you.
I've only heard, I think, the one change so far about the potentially expanding that formal grant programs and or other relevant experience, however that wanted to be phrased. Was there anything else that we've discussed potentially changing?
I think also just being extra clear on the timing requirements of reporting.
Yes.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to add that, just kind of reiterating that same language. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jeff and Don, I got one more for you. And this is, again, just another question for the group as I read through it. Where it says the city manager is empowered to negotiate and approve alternative payment methods. Is there a way to maybe say, or should we say, the city manager is authorized to negotiate and approve such accommodations subject to a written agreement? So when we do alternative plans, is there something that we're doing in writing with that person? And does it need to be specified that it's going to be subject to that written agreement?
Yes, there would absolutely be a contract, counselor. So section 6, all applicants will be required to enter into an SSCP grant agreement with the city. That would lay out the specific payment schedule for them.
Even with the alternative?
Yeah, we would include it in the agreement. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Then we're covered there.
Well, then I'll entertain a motion. If somebody wants to remember those ads.
I move to adopt the 2025-2027 guidelines for the special service contract program as included in the meeting packet with the additions, or I'm sorry, with the edits that Jeff discussed in regards to yeah,
Jeff, can you,
Yeah,
you say
so
those-
it's right. So it is clarifying that in terms of grant track record, there be some provision for people who do not have any grant track record, but other kind of the general way to approach this would be everyone would get the 20 points unless there's some reason that they have some negative history, and then points would be subtracted from there to make it more equitable. And then the other one is ensuring and being very clear in the language that there are going to be 2 written reports required, and also a final presentation to the city council, and that in the event that there's an alternative funding arrangement, that it would be explicitly communicated to both the council and the applicant when those reports would be expected, so that everyone's clear.
I'll second that.
a motion from Counselor Sheldon, a second from Counselor Smallwood. All in favor?
I
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mayor,
Council.
you're back. Turn things over to you.
Yeah. Hey,
Here.
so the next agenda item is the Sandy Net plan.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll kick this off real quick and then turn it over to Greg. Just to recap, the completion of a Sandy Net master plan and adoption of a Sandy Net master plan has been a council goal for quite a while now. We are very, very close to accomplishing that goal. The council received a presentation from the consultant that put this plan together back in November or December. Gosh, I'm forgetting the exact month now, but several months ago. And since that time, we took some of the council's feedback and incorporated a rural expansion criteria or matrix to help identify where Sandy Net would expand further. Otherwise, no changes to the actual master plan as you received it on December 16th, 2024. I found the date. And with that, Greg, I'll turn it over to you to highlight the work that you and your team have been doing over the last few months and anything else you want to share.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, Council. Tyler took a lot of the talking points that I had as background here, so I'll try to jump right in. Well, I will do a little bit more recap. December 16th, Rizzy and myself presented before you the draft of the master plan and received feedback later, which was eventually solidified into a council goal 3.1 and then 3.11. Which required or requested that a clear expansion criteria be developed for rural expansion. With that, there were no other major changes to the master plan itself. So staff went back to the Sandy Net Advisory Board and across 2 different iterations came up with 7 ranking criteria that it determined that would best satisfy areas for rural expansion, and really tried to focus on as many aspects as possible to get a complete picture. And that is attached below the master plan in the document there, but those 7 criteria are exclusivity, location or proximity to existing infrastructure, the subscriber costs or costs that it would be to the end subscriber, as well as Sandy Net, the revenue opportunity that the area poses for Sandy Net, any political or community factors, the fit with the existing system and its architecture, as well as the total or considerations for capital investment required for that. And so staff has taken those, compiled those, even provided a kind of a cookie cutter template that it kind of planned on using to help rank those, so that any considerations in the future would get put on file. So if the area is deemed acceptable, we can look back on it. If it's not, we can revisit it at a later time to see if it's changed. And with that said, Sandy Net has also, since the reading in December of the draft, already started implementing some aspects of the master plan that were made known during budget planning season, which included a rate increase, which was requested, the continued replacement of equipment in the home and within our data center, as well as setting funds aside to find ourselves a new home. And SandyNet continues to focus on regulatory changes. And so one other aspect that was touched on, it was the rural expansion. So with the introduction of our new ranked criteria, staff is coming back and requesting or respectfully requesting that the council review, ask any questions if it has any, and ultimately adopt the SandyNet master plan.
Thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate that. I'm a little slow on the unmuting, out of practice. Are there any questions or comments?
Looks like we got a hand up from Counselor Hanley.
Oh, I see. Okay. Go ahead.
I have a question on the 7 criteria. I don't know how the rest of council feels, but I don't love political / community factors. I think community factors is plenty. I think political feels, I don't know, it doesn't feel right. But I love the community factors. Does anybody else feel that same way?
What would you like to see in that place?
I wouldn't put another word. I would just do community factors.
Leave it at
That's
community, yeah.
I like that.
The
I like
intention's
that.
the same.
Yep.
Yeah, that was my suggestion to add that in there, just because sometimes we do need to be cognizant of those things, but we don't need to call it out as such. So that's a good call, Lindy, or councilors.
All right, other questions? I have a question then. So as we learned before, the when we have a subdivision going in or something, the developer pays for all the connections to be made. In this situation, it looks like there's still the plan to go ahead and allow areas outside the city to connect for the service, but not necessarily, but the cost of kind of getting down, down the long driveways or whatever it is, when there's enough customers to make it, I forget which word you mentioned there. Revenue opportunity, you talked about at least 12 per mile, something like that is kind of the point, but that it sounds like that's all still going to be taken out of the city's SandyNet funds to make that happen. Is that right?
Yes, as it stands, I don't think there's really any other way to recoup those costs other than higher one-time charges. And so it's definitely a consideration when going into an area, the cost, how much burden it's going to add to there. So the 12 subscribers per mile is kind of an industry number that's used, and it's often represents overhead. I used it more or less for going down small streets that might be long and not have a lot of homes on it, where it might not be worth the high cost to bring it out there. Part of the behind the scenes that we want to do, and part of that template that I have in there tries to break it down, is identifying as much as possible the true cost, because that might be one of the opportunities to go one place or another. And so we don't want to bankrupt ourselves in the process, obviously. And so we want to do as much assessing as possible. But I didn't speak directly towards like any specific cap or cutoff there, just because it could vary at any point. Yeah.
So in the case of something that's going to cost like $20,000 per house, I mean, what I guess I don't want to see is that the city folks, city subscribers are, vastly subsidizing the cost of connecting outside the city, because that's really, because we're making the developers pay for that. And then, but I also understand the desire to have more outside of city subscribers, and I get that they may not connect to it if they had to pay the 20,000 themselves. I think the question is whether or not, I bring it up to like there's quite a few folks that don't have sewer connections, and they're being told they have to pay anywhere from $30,000 to $80,000 to connect. And so it just seems like, we're telling our city residents that they would have to pay to connect to the sewer. But on the other hand, if you live outside the city will cover that huge cost, and again, I don't have a good handle on what it is, but I'm okay with approving this, but I guess I would like to kind of have a little check-in at some point about how much the cost is that we're trying to cover. And, if it's $20,000 per house, that's something that I think I'd like to have a little bit more say over before we take that on. I can't imagine it would be that much, but I don't know what it costs. So what are some other thoughts about that?
So this is an area that I push the board, or whatever our committee board is called, to really kind of come up with this broad view of these opportunities, because every opportunity is unique, and what makes it attractive or unattractive is going to vary dramatically. Whether $20,000 is a good or not good investment to hook people up is not by itself a decision point. It may be a great investment at 20,000 if that long-term ROI is there and we have the capital. Now, no matter what it costs to do it, no matter how great the ROI is on the other side of that, if we don't have the capital to invest, it's a non-starter. So each of these factors in and of themselves aren't necessarily, you don't have to check every one of these boxes, but each one of them brings a risk associated with the investment. And by calling them out and quantifying them, as a council, we're able to manage that risk and decide, is that an investment we want to do? Is that ROI or that revenue opportunity good enough to justify this capital investment at this point in time? And in some cases, that's why that political community factors are going to come in, because sometimes there's going to be other reasons we need to maybe, smooth things over a little bit. So there may be some discretionary things, but the others are pretty straight up, accounting numbers.
So is the city council going to give the approval to expand in certain areas with these and invest these costs? Is that what you're saying, Don?
I'll defer to Greg on when you would bring that to council.
And I'm also just going to point out that $20,000 for one house takes 30 years to pay off. I did the calculation the last time. So
yeah, I use that, but my point is that it's all
Right.
about that trade-off, right?
Yeah.
And so,
yeah,
Yeah.
and they do pay a higher rate, but still, that's
and I will point out that and just before Greg even takes it over, if it's a significant capital investment, it's coming to council because they're going to need approvals.
Yeah, and I had before this, one of the other supporting documents that helped us come up with the criteria for this was driving a lot of sites, especially those within the urban growth boundary and reserve. Urban growth reserve, and then I can't remember what the other one was, but outside of city limits, but nearby that the city will eventually expand into, and try to determine the cost it would be to hit every one of those houses right now. And we got across the board, some that were better and some that were far worse, where it's like there's really no way we would ever make this feasible with the way things currently are. And so we wanted to make sure that we took some of that into consideration. And so I do know that the price goes down as more people sign up in an area. So I do speak to trying to localize campaigns to try to drive that cost down by getting as many people connected the first time we go through. I also prioritize, which is why it's kind of its own standalone area ranking, is how close it is to existing infrastructure, since that tends to dictate the vast high majority of the cost. Drilling a fiber line up to a house while expensive, is not necessarily $20,000. Luckily, it doesn't have to be engineered like sewer, but it is a cost. But luckily, if you're near main line, that tends to be the higher cost. And so if it's already existing or nearby, my original projections were probably another 5+ years around existing infrastructure before SandyNet really had to start planning on drilling substantial mainline to get into more rural areas. And so in line with your prior mention or comment about bringing it forth and kind of seeing how things were going, I think over the course of time, it would be really good to start evaluating with the addition of having to potentially start drilling mainline. How does that cost change or come down? And during our, we selected like 10 neighborhoods or streets to start looking at to kind of do our analysis when we broke it down. And that the costs were not at 20,000, but they did range somewhere between a couple thousand all the way up to 10,000, depending on where you were. And so while we didn't hit that necessarily high of a number, there are some that are pretty far out there where it would take a significant amount of time to pay back. And so the only areas that would really make that feasible are getting more people to sign up in that area to drive that cost down, or coming up with kind of a sometimes we can reduce costs by putting the burden on homeowners to help us dig a pipe in or help us around certain areas. So we've come up with a couple of tactics, not something that can really translate into that document, but the main focus was focusing on areas near fiber to keep that cost down. Sorry.
Or a grant.
But
We've seen money funneled for these sorts of things too, so that helps.
Any other questions or comments? All right, can I have a motion?
We do
Sorry,
have
Mayor,
Counselor Hanley. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It must just not be on your screen. Greg, just for clarification on that, at what point does this come before council? Like, is there an amount of money? Like, if this is going to cost $60,000, this comes before council. Is there a specific threshold?
honestly, I hadn't selected a specific threshold. It was more or less going to be if we looked at it and said, this is kind of a no, if it's anything more than kind of a no-brainer, where it really made sense to us. And in reality, because we're going to be assessing 8 places at a time, we figured there was always going to be kind of a shining star that was going to be the next one that we kind of focus on. And so if the council would like to create or would like to review based on a certain level, I'm more than happy to do so, but it wasn't something that I initially written into there. At the same time, also, I do want to make sure that we are acting somewhat like a business and making rational choices as well. So like I said, I don't want to be making any choices or decisions that are going to jeopardize SandyNet in the future.
Greg, in your thought process, what would that threshold be?
It would be, I would break it down if the price per passing got, I don't want to contradict myself because I feel
You're
like I'm
okay.
going to need to find
Yeah.
this here. I'm going to say if it's probably over between 4,000 and 5,000, it might start saying, okay, there's probably another area that's lower that we could be focusing on right now.
Okay.
And if, but that price does come down to if you go into an area that has 30 some homes as well. And so I try to focus on the individual average cost, but also try to take in other considerations if necessary.
Thank you, Greg.
Greg, this is something you would bring to the advisory board ahead of time anyway, right? As part of your decision-making process.
Absolutely.
We have one retired CFO on there, and we've got a couple of other folks who are very into the numbers thing, and we'll. So there is some level of scrutiny going on there too before it comes to us.
Yeah, I don't really like making decisions by myself that are really large and impactful without someone else reviewing them or giving me an okay in a way.
To remember also that much of those installation costs are the staff time spent actually doing the installs. It's not purchasing $10,000 of material to do that install. It's staff investment. And so from the standpoint of a clean threshold coming before the council, it's not a normal materials and services contract or capital construction contract. Greg and his team do most of this stuff in-house, with the exception of some of the work that they did contract out over the last few years. So I guess all that to say, it's a little more difficult to quantify because it's not just a construction contract, right? It's we're maybe partnering with CBX and they're, you know, sharing their drill and we're providing the manpower or human power. So it's a little more nuanced, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Is this also something that would be reviewed as part of the budget every, biannually for, you're thinking you're going to be doing, this many connections or whatever, and so you're kind of setting aside a certain amount of extra either time of employees, but especially if there's additional costs, that would kind of get programmed in with the budget every 2 years?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Trying to do it better at planning when we're going to be going out to areas to give advance notice, but also, do our due diligence and assessing the entire situation. Planning or having, rural funds set aside from what we normally do for fiber expansion to help better track it. We would probably establish a budget for every area that would be our target goal, including take rate, which would backfeed into how much marketing or outreach we do in that area to try to gather support or, help us cross that threshold and what would make that area viable. As well as, and Tyler made a very good point here because I've kind of always operated that, but I realize not, I didn't communicate that super well. We don't plan on necessarily contracting any of this out in its current state. So we're not going to necessarily bring in somebody to drill out a neighborhood, maybe if it made sense, but a lot of times it's our own staff when we build it into the budget or it's built into our plan in between replacement or what have you, that it's going to make sense to do. And so we're not going to, we might have a target, but we're not going to be, signing a large construction contract with a drilling company to go out and push these areas. It'll be as we can, as we see fit, as the funds provide. Grow as pay as you grow, I think is what it's called.
Are we ready for a motion? Okay, I make a motion to adopt the Sandy Net Master Plan with its included addendums and exhibits.
Heartily seconded.
All those in favor vote aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you,
Yay,
Grant.
hey,
Great job.
we crossed
Great
something
job.
off of our goals
Yeah.
from like 3 years ago. Yay.
Took us a while to get there, but we got there. Greg, thank you to you and your team for digging into, I don't want to say the weeds, but digging into the outside of the grass and into the flower beds to get this across the finish line and develop that criteria for the rural expansion. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Great job. Thank you. So Tyler, the city manager report?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to actually turn it over to Nellie just briefly to provide any sort of legislative update that she has to share this evening, and then I'll resume my report once she finishes.
Good evening, everyone. How are you guys doing? Good to see you. I don't have a super long update other than to, as you probably read, the special session is going to convene on August 29th. We actually expect that to go 2 days because there will not actually be a quorum in the Senate due to vacations right around Labor Day weekend. That being said, it's not that unheard of simply because the way the Constitution is constructed, the bill will have to start in the House. So it's going to have, start with that House discussion and then move on to the Senate on Saturday. Assuming all things move as swiftly as possible. You may have also read about the governor considering some line item vetoes to the Christmas tree bill, namely the Willamette Falls Locks money, the $45 million. That is primarily due to some conflicts between the Grand Ronde tribes of Grand Ronde, as well as just PG and all of the political drama surrounding that. There is some speculation that she might be using the Christmas tree bill. As you know, it's 30 days until, sorry, I'm rambling on at this point, but she has 30 days, work days to sign that bill. And so that would be the 8th. So she has until Friday. So really she has until the end of this week to kind of decide if she's going to try to strong arm some legislators to show up for the special session. That being said, it sounds like the Republican caucuses have selected a few members to show up, and there is expected to be a quorum as of now. As you know, anything can happen between now and the 29th of August, but that is moving along. And I guess really the main issue that I would assume the city is concerned about is ensuring that whatever gas tax is passed, that 50-30-20 split is still maintained, unlike what the legislature offered up at the very 11th hour of the legislative session that would have initially been 100% of that gas tax going to the state. So happy to follow up with all of you if you have any specific questions on certain issues at any point. Just let me know.
Just a clarification. So if there is some, she does veto the, I think it was 45 million for the locks and all that project, does that mean that money is available for reallocation? And is she going to be doing that by Friday, or how does that all play out?
Yes, potentially it does. She would not be able to just take that 45 million and put it somewhere else. That would take a vote of the legislature in order to do that. But it would potentially, there's also conversations about perhaps I don't think it's as strong as the Falls because there isn't as much opposition, but the Hood River Bridge is another project that was highly funded that could be, open up some more funds down the road, but those reallocations would likely be in the February session.
In the February session, okay. All right, any other questions?
Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Nellie. I thought we had the money, so. Thanks.
We're
Thanks
banking.
for clarifying. Yeah, thanks for clarifying.
All right, so a few updates for me. We've got a library advisory board meeting this Wednesday at 6 p.m. Unfortunately, the projector that we use to host Movies in the Park broke at the last movie event that we had. So we've got Parks and Rec staff working to secure a rental so we can finish out the season. New projectors are very costly, so we're going to do some evaluation internally on how we can acquire a new one and what the best course of action is there, potentially revisiting the concept of Starlight Cinema Movies in the Park with the council and making sure that we get the biggest bang for our buck before we go and spend a lot of money on a new projector. So likely a future conversation to be had, but just wanted to put it on your radar that we did have a piece of equipment break, working on finishing out the season as scheduled. The next movie is The Goonies for this Friday, August 8th. So working through that. Sort of a robust update for the police department that I will do quickly just on open positions. So we just posted the sergeant position today, recruiting for that one now. We're working through applications and interviews for the community services officer and for the records specialist position. And then we do have an offer out and background check is underway for an officer to fill the position that the council funded at the end of last year. So assuming all of 4 of these recruitments continue to go successfully and we make it through all the application and interview steps, we will be, well, I don't want to jinx it and say fully staffed, but we'll be back on track to having a fully functioning police force. And with that, I just want to say thank you to all of our officers for putting in the extra hours and ensuring that all of our summer events are going off without a hitch, still responding to calls timely and effectively as they always do, and still keeping an eye out on traffic enforcement in our downtown, because that's certainly an ongoing effort with the high volume of traffic that we have on Highway 26. So thank you to all of them. And lastly, I'm working on getting a comprehensive council goals update put together for a future work session, likely in September. I need to still coordinate the specific date with the mayor on the agenda setting date. But historically, we've, adopted council goals and then they sort of, we work on them internally, but we don't have a good mechanism for providing the council with updates on the status of those goals. We've incorporated listing council goals in each of the staff reports for council agenda items. So you can kind of see what we're working on and how that aligns with the current goals that are adopted. But I'm working on getting some sort of a more comprehensive update provided to you, and we'll do maybe an every 6-month check-in or so that you can see the ongoing progress being made on completing those goals, and anything that we haven't started working on, give you a tentative timeline on when that specific item would be picked up, so you can know, okay, that's a Q4 of 25 or a Q2 of 26, and just trying to keep you all updated and involved along the way. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Can you give us a timeline on, or how the community outreach officer position's doing?
Yes, I believe interviews are scheduled for the 1st of next week. I don't know the exact numerical date. We tend to not do interviews on Mondays usually, so I'm guessing it's either August 12th or 13th. I know they are scheduled. We had, I believe it was 13 applicants for that position. And so hopefully we will get a successful candidate in this pool and be able to fast track the onboarding and background process for that individual, because we've had a lengthy wait for the community services officer, and we're internally itching to get that filled. And I know the council wants to get that filled too, for some more targeted enforcement and service offerings down on Industrial Way and for the homeless population.
Very good. All right, well, let's go ahead and start off with councilor comments. Don, would you like to start?
Sure, thanks. I was unable to make the National Night Out. I did see a lot of people there, and my son represented the family, got his family there, and they had a great time. So I want to thank them for that activity the other night. And then also, probably the biggest thing that on my mind right now is this OGEC thing. And it feels like, I assume we can talk about it because we're in an open meeting, so we can talk about it, right? I am concerned about the direction the Oregon Ethics Commission is taking in shutting down basically anything, potentially making city councils and other bodies like ours even less effective than we already are. I mean, if every bit of our communication has to be in a forum like this, we're going to have to meet a lot more, and it's going to be harder and rougher. I see this as a real bad lose-lose. And I had asked a bunch of follow-up questions to Josh, and he sent me a bunch of answers that made me feel even worse. I mean, he's doing his job and telling us what how things might look. But the reason I'm bringing it up here is there a way for us to opine or offer opinions, considerations, and positions to the commission as they're considering this case? It's not our case, right, that they're considering, but are there ways for us to basically go, hey, tread carefully here, because you could shut down a lot of really good work that needs to be done, that councils do across the state?
Is there,
even to the point of, can we can Nelly pass along our messages and our concerns?
is there a reason why we can't do a letter from the council stating those concerns and pass them on?
That's where I'm exploring. Yeah, at a minimum, right?
I think that's certainly a reasonable request. Let me check in with some of my contacts at the League of Oregon Cities to see if they're doing a sort of joint initiative or effort from, a broad sampling of cities, or if people are handling that on a one-off basis.
This could be crippling, man.
It is, yeah, and so I think it is, and there's already some involvement from the mayor list that I'm on, and folks expressing concern, and I think there's an interest in LOC trying to kind of bring our comments together in kind of a single voice. So hopefully
Mayor,
that's going to help.
Sorry,
And
Mayor,
I do believe the OGEC is kind of way out ahead of their skis. But, okay.
Sorry to
Anything else?
interrupt. Sorry
Oh,
to interrupt. I
sorry.
just wanted to add to that as a relatively new counselor, the mentoring is gone, right? Like, it's gone. And so how, as a new counselor, how do you get onboarded without being able to talk without being able to communicate. So if we are able to do that, can we make sure that that's a point that is hit upon, please?
Definitely, yeah. And I think, the actual number of subjects, I mean, obviously if there's something, what spurred this was that example from Salem, which was, somewhat egregious. But I think, when we're just talking about a particular topic that's not coming in front of the council that we know, it's perfectly okay to kind of have those conversations. But I think it's good to kind of clarify things. Councillor Hokinson, do you have any other comments?
Nope, that was it. We need to get Laura to bed. Thanks.
If I can just add one more comment about this, Councillor Hokinson mentioned that he had sent some questions to Josh and Josh had provided him an answer. I'll clean up the formatting of that email, but get all of the same information out to all of the elected so that you're all on the same page with what was asked and what was said. So just look for that in the next day or two.
Very good. Councillor Ramsayer. No, let's see. No, I'm sorry. Councillor Hanley.
Thank
I'm
you.
not-
I'll be quick. Big, huge thanks to the officers. They have been putting in so much time trying to cover everybody while we're waiting to restaff, and to HR they've been through the ringer and have, they're incredible, and the amount of time and work and effort they're putting in to get everyone fully staffed is pretty amazing, including in that the new parks director. And speaking of parks, a big shout out to Tiana and the Parks and Recs crew for all the incredible work they do. I neglected to mention them the last meeting. We talked about Mountain Festival and the Chamber of Commerce event, but it's unbelievable the quality of work. When there's a problem, they jump right on it and do everything they can to fix it. We're very lucky in this city to have this crew. So thank you. Dawn, National Night Out is this week, right? That was Sandy Night Out. National Night Out is this week. So
Thank you. Yeah,
you're
they had a
welcome.
good time though.
Yes, I'm sure they did. So I'm really excited. Our little neighborhood has a thing happening, and they've invited all the people there. So should be great. Thanks for everyone for all the things that everyone does.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. Councillor Ramsayer.
I went to the Planning Commission meeting on Monday last week. They had 3 variances for Deer Creek, Deer Point Park, that were type 3 under section A, which was the only one able to do it. The 3 variances they approved were building materials, the roof pitch, and secondary roof forms. The building materials were taking a little bit of a step away from Sandy style with the concrete squares, because those weren't looked at as safe in that area as a rounded sort of cylinder post holder. So they've diverted from the square and the stone to the concrete. And I believe they approved that they're going to mix it with neutral style color so that it appears more Sandy style. The roof pitch, we went from 612, which is kind of what was introduced in the plan, to a 412 pitch, which is looked upon better because this is going to be a very large structure. It's 94 feet by 50 feet, 19 feet tall, and 10 columns. So that was looked upon as a little bit more eye appealing from the outside, from the neighborhood, and from the road. And then the secondary roof forms, again, we're kind of taking a little bit of a different approach to what we consider Sandy style because it is so large. It looks like there's going to be I-beams and not wood. They voted down painting those I-beams with a wood colored paint that resembled wood. They just didn't think the I-beams would look right. So they took that option. They left that option out. But one of the commissioners requested Tyler and the architect and the commission to look at adding a cupola on top of the roof for appeal, I guess. because it is such a large thing. And Tyler was going to look into that. And Lango Hansen was there, and they were very good, as they always are, about listening and answering questions. So the commission did approve those 3 variances, and it kind of, we'll see what happens with the cupola request and how that's all going to shake out. I mean, the cupola serves really no functional purpose, but it would just be for looks. So I think the concern was adding maintenance and kind of change the view of the whole thing and how big a cupola would have to be for a structure that size. So there's a little more work that they need to do on that. But that was the meat of the meeting last Monday. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, Councilor Ramsayer. Okay, Councilor Sheldon?
Yes, I'd like to defer my time to Lori's sleep tonight.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate that. I've got no
Mrs.
responsibilities, so I don't really have much of a comment, but I would like to congratulate D31 on a successful event. I think they had over 1,000 participants, so congratulations to them.
Okay, Councilor Mayton?
I had no events either, so I'll defer my time to you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank Jeff for his work on that report and the scoring options. I really think those are just the right approach, and I look forward to working with both Councilor Hanley and Councilor Ramsayer to receive the request for funding. So we'll keep you posted on that. Thank you so much. The library task force that I'm representing the rural mayors on, we're meeting again this week. And one of the challenges is the fact that everybody agrees that we need more equity in how the funds are allocated as a district, as a county district. And what we have now is pretty large disparity between the urban cities and the rural cities. And like I said, it's between, I think, $27 per person versus $82 per person. And when you factor in the amount of money that some of the higher income cities are able to put towards general fund contributions to their libraries, it's even more disparate. So that said, I think there is some reluctance on the part of rocking a boat or something like that to consider reallocating that. Basically, people who, to those who have much, they want that to continue. So I don't know if we'll be successful. I think there is maybe some opportunity to work across the board with asking for some sort of a cost adjustment factor. Total equity is probably not, it's too far of a reach for them. So I think at this point, we're going to try to see about if there's a kind of a equity factor that can be applied, especially to those that have lower median incomes, household incomes, adjusting based on that median income so that there is a little bit more funding for the libraries that obviously have a need for that. Those lower median household incomes do rely on library services probably far more so than the wealthier cities. So we'll see how that goes, and I'll keep you posted on it. The other thing I just wanted to mention was, first of all, thank you very much for Councilor Hokanson, for Council President Hokanson, for taking over. I appreciate that. I don't know what I was kind of thinking of when I kind of planned a little vacation and forgot to look at both calendars. So I thank you very much for taking the lead on that. And as we talked about the agenda and where we ended up at the last meeting, there was, I could tell that there was just a lot of lack of clarification on what we all voted on. And so I kind of got the feeling that we have pretty much a consensus that allowing the portable toilets and gray water tanks and things like that for short-term use was something that, you know, so that a couple businesses that are ready to go sooner than later can go ahead and move forward quickly with that. And so I think there's a consensus for that. With the other options, I didn't kind of get the sense that there was a complete consensus, and I just want to make sure that we're not, you know, voting for something that we don't clearly understand. There was nothing in the staff report about loss of SDCs and what that does to, you know, basically having our existing residents have to pay even more if we're losing those SDCs, or, you know, or losing them as ratepayers too. So for that reason, what I'd like to do is working with the city manager is for the next meeting that we have, I'd like folks to kind of submit questions or ideas or things like that to the city manager to kind of clarify what it is that we want to decide. For example, you know, is this you know, if it's long-term, how much of a long-term is it? You know, is there interest in allowing things where they don't have to ever hook up to the city sewer? I'll kind of have I'll work with the city manager on kind of sending out just a tickler list, but just something that we can all kind of think about and bring those questions or comments or positions or whatever it is you want to the next meeting as a workshop, so that I want to make sure that our staff report answers as many questions as we need it to going forward when we make this decision. So if you want them to kind of address the impacts of, you know, a particular approach, then let's make sure that we have that information. I don't want us making decisions where we don't have all the information we need, and it's a long-term impact, and it's, you know, a much bigger possibility of, you know, lots of different businesses applying than not. So just being clear, and I just want to make sure that we can do a good staff report. Councilor Hokanson.
So
Go
Mayor,
ahead.
we had a first reading of an ordinance, and it's due back to do a second reading. And I don't think we can take that off the table without actually voting on it at this point in time. I think it's a procedural misstep. So I hear what you're saying and I understand the concerns, but I think it has to come back. I was expecting it to be back tonight, actually, before we can go into a work session to change it. We can't just leave it hanging. At least that's my opinion. Maybe Josh or Tyler can correct me.
Yeah, I'll let Josh jump in and provide the legal.
Well,
Oh, Mayor, you muted yourself.
we're not going to have this whole discussion about this again right now. We're going to have it at the next meeting. And I think, but in between now and the next meeting, I think there's the opportunity to kind of clarify legally what we have to do and what we don't have to do. But in any event, you know, the information that we were given did not clarify all the consequences of what was being voted on. So
I'm agreeing, but I'm expecting, and I think
I get it. I know.
my
I
other
know.
counselors are
Yep.
expecting that on the next agenda will be a second reading of that ordinance. We have to do that. Even if the decision is everyone says no because these issues have come up and we want to do no, we still have to bring it up and have
Yeah.
that vote and say
Well,
no.
like I
Agreed,
said,
agreed.
okay, is my time, this is not a give and take thing. Everybody gets to talk, and at this point, I've said what I'm
My
going to say,
point
and
is you cannot take this
I
away
understand
from
the
this from an
rules,
agenda item
Councilor
as a mayor.
Hokanson. Yeah, I get
Okay,
that.
I just want to be clear.
No, I'm not making a decision. No, not at all. So we're going to
And
talk about
with
it
the
at the next
OGEC,
meeting,
I
and we'll
can't
do
talk to
whatever needs to
anybody
be.
about this other than right here, right now. So I'm kind of limited. I apologize. I'm not
Got
trying
it.
to be a jerk
Got
about it.
Right, I got it. And so we'll have this on the agenda for the next meeting. You know, the scope of it will be decided by, you know, legally, and, you know, we'll go forward. But
Not just the work
before-
session, but a meeting where we can vote, right? It's got to be a vote in the next session.
I'm going to, we're talking to the legal side of it, but again, when we don't have, it's like, I don't want to make another pool vote here where we've made a decision where we didn't have enough information. And so I want to make sure.
I agree with your reasons, but I'm saying we have to bring it to a vote.
I understand the legal side of it. I understand it totally. So thank you. I appreciate you bringing that up. It's important, and that'll be.
Well, do I have your commitment that we will have a vote on this in the next agenda item?
You'll have my commitment that it'll be on the agenda, and we'll have legal input for what we can and can't do. Okay.
Then I move.
And let me finish. Let me
Get a
finish.
request outside of the mayor's direction that we have an agenda
No.
item. I can't do it
What I'm saying,
through OGEC on the site, but if 2 or 3 counselors request an item, it's going to be added to the agenda. So I have to do it here, Mira, because of what Josh has told us I
I
can't do.
get that. Okay. Let me say it again. I need you to stop talking. I'm telling you, it's going to be on the agenda. Whether or not it's a vote of the previous one that we just had
That's
is going to be
unacceptable.
decided.
But it has to be. It has to be because of the way that it has to be. Dawn's correct.
Just from a Robert rules things, we can say no. We can all say no and go back and revisit.
Can we let Josh chime in?
So I want to
I need everybody to mute themselves, okay? Thank you.
ask Jeff perhaps if he has recollection of the records in front of him about what exactly the motion was, but I think it was to move it forward to a second reading, move this ordinance forward to a second reading. So my impression leaving that meeting was the ordinance as it was voted on has to be brought back to the next meeting, but that we also received some direction about some alternatives. And so we were planning on bringing at least 1, maybe 2 alternatives, and maybe the mayor has another additional alternative in mind. So we can bring a number of options forward, but one of them has to be the one that was moved forward to a second reading.
The motion was to approve the first reading of the ordinance as it was presented last time. And you're right, Josh, there was then subsequent discussion about what the council thought they were voting on or not, which I tried to capture in the minutes, and some direction to the staff to make some changes prior to bringing it back to a second reading. I don't know that there was discussion about the timing of when that second reading would need to be. If there are legal requirements around that, Josh, I don't know what they are, but perhaps you could speak to them.
I'm not aware of anything that you have either in your code, charter, or council rules about specifically the timing of when that has to be brought back. So
I'll be talking to the city manager and the city attorney about legally what we need to do, because what I've heard from you all is that you want to have a vote on this second motion. That's great. We're going to do that. I'm not going to say it's going to be at the next meeting, but what I want for you all and for all of us is to make sure that we understand, does this include Home Depots or not? Does it, what is the effect on the SDCs and all that? I want us to make an informed decision. And if there's not a requirement that we have to have it at exactly the next meeting, then that's what I'm going to do, is I would rather make sure that everybody's questions are answered before we take that second vote. That's all I'm asking for. I just, it's very important to have that information before we, and it was just very frustrating. I will say this really publicly, that there was just a lot of confusion as to what got voted on last time, because everybody was like, what do you mean it doesn't mean include a Home Depot? So what does it mean when we don't have SDCs being paid by all these folks? How does that affect all the homeowners that are paying for it? So those are all really important things that we need to kind of talk about before we say, before we just move on this. And I just think that whatever we need to do to make sure that we get the information, I'm not saying how to vote or anything like that. I'm just saying that I want this information out there. It should have been in the staff report. It wasn't. And we're going to have a good, full staff report that has the concept, you know, the pros and cons of all this, so that when people vote, they understand what they're voting for. So is there any other questions or comments that need to get talked about tonight?
Mayor, if I can just add one more comment to what you just stated. It's exceedingly difficult for staff to bring back a well-rounded ordinance without having this intermediate conversation, work session, whatever we want to call it, to just get clarification on what exactly the modifications were that some of the council members envisioned. And so certainly we intend to bring back an ordinance, but we need some good clarification on what exactly the 7 elected officials are anticipating are going to be included in that ordinance. And the first reading happened. And then, you know, immediately after that, there was conversation around what did it include and what did it not include. And so we just want to make sure everyone's on the same page before we bring back something for a vote that, you know, everyone is in agreement, or at least everyone understands what is included in that language.
And my intent is to get this done as quickly as possible to kind of understand what all the, what all the pros and cons of all these are. And that's why I'm asking for the next, you know, for the workshop part of the meeting to be, and we could, you know, we could kind of maybe even, I haven't worked out next time's agenda, but we could, you know, have a vote on that after the workshop if it's appropriate. But in any event, I want to make sure that we have this staff report. So please send your comments. City manager will be asking for comments and all as to what your intent was, what your intent is, what do you want to know about the consequences or the, you know, the pros and cons of these different approaches. What does it entail? What does it not entail? What does it do for our rates and all that? So let's try to get a good staff report and bring this back for a vote. I'm excited about it as you are. Like I said, I think there's, you know, we could obviously agree on the short-term stuff right away. On the long-term stuff, it might take 2 meetings to kind of get that clarified. And I think we need to take that time because we're not in, you know, it's not like we're under the gun to do it in less than 30 days. So that's my comments. Any other things for the good of the order? Thank you for your patience tonight, folks. I appreciate it. I know it's a challenging subject, especially given the moratorium, but yeah, I think we'll get through it. So I did read one of the Sandy posts from 1948 where they were voting. There was a vote on the sewer, building a new sewer system in 1948, and it passed like 130 to 98 or something like that. So we've been here before in 1948 and since then, and we'll get through this. And I appreciate everybody's patience and respect. So thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Good night.
Good night.